my dear participants. I am not going to make many new points. What I am trying to do is to provide a brief summary for the next 10 minutes based on the deliberations that have taken place here. There were 5 speakers, brilliant presentations. It was really an intellectual feast, and therefore it is not easy for me to summarize this in 10 minutes. What I'll try to do is that pick up some of the important points and highlight once again to reinforce some of the points made. I may not follow the same process as the speakers or the same way in which the speakers spoke, but I'll try to confine to my time, Mr. Chairman. One of the major issues to start with was that the state initiatives are on the decline. Perhaps it may be partly because of the reason that central government funding is more skewed in favor of central government institutions and not in favor of the state government institutions. The second may be a factor that private institutions are coming up in a big way in many of the states, and as a result of that, the state governments feel that they need not have to feel responsible for higher education. So the major issue in RUSA is how do we revive higher education? And if we want to revive higher education, more than 80% or 90% of the enrollments are taking place in the state universities. So if you do not recognize that factor, we will not be able to revive higher education in this country. So therefore, RUSA tries to analyze and tries to see that what can be done. This does not mean that all the financial requirements of the state will be met through RUSA or channeled through the funding through RUSA. The amount of money that RUSA will be able to provide to the states should not be used as an incentive, as a basis, because at present, more than 80% of the funds are going to the central institutions. Only 20% is going to the state. And within the state, more than 80% of this 20% is going to the non-planned expenditure, which means that states virtually do not have any money to start any new initiative or new programs or new projects. So that is where RUSA comes into the picture, whereby can we use this money that is available from RUSA, which is channeled through the state council, to keep it as an incentive to revive the process of planning and the process of implementation of higher education programs at the state level. It provides an opportunity to the states to provide as an incentive for making higher education more relevant, more qualitatively oriented. And some issues that were raised as a question was that, does RUSA cover all higher education institutions, or are they confined to public institutions? Do they cover aided institutions? Do they cover self-financing institutions? Do they cover other institutions? The underlying assumption being, if RUSA does not cover all institutions, perhaps we will not be in a position to talk about revival of higher education as a whole. Second, the way the funds are channeled, first it goes to the state councils, then from the states it goes to the state councils and to the other institutions. So the question that is posed is that, if many states do not have state councils, will the state councils be created in all the states? Perhaps the expectation is that it will be done, but how fast is a question. Second, there is also an issue of sharing of resources between 65 to 35 or 10%. There are different formula that we found. Then the question comes, the richer states may be in a position to take advantage of the provisions of RUSA rather than the poorer states. Also because of the reason that once the plan period is over, 12th plan period is over, many of the initiatives that were started during the plan period becomes non-planned expenditure, and it becomes a responsibility and the liability of the states, which many poor states will not be in a position to take up from a long-term point of view. Therefore, the issue is that how do we guarantee, how do we ensure RUSA goes actually to the least developed, the most backward states in terms of higher education? That's a challenge. That's from the point of view recommendation, that is one of the issues that has come. Then we will also have, based on the experiences from Gujarat, very good explanation was given regarding the implementation process. What I liked in that presentation is also the fact that it tries to give, say for example, the targets are territorial in nature. When you talk about GR, when you talk about many of these things, these are territorial in nature. But the intervention in RUSA is institutional in nature. Therefore, the issue is how do we marry the institutional targets and actions with the territorial targets. And that, what they try to do is that create a cluster of colleges, higher education districts, and then zones, and then go to the states, you know. So that marriage of these two perhaps slightly conflicting issues is very important, especially when we talk about planning, either from the long-term point of view or from the short-term point of view, or we talk in terms of the strategic planning. Secondly, these interventions should not be confined to the infrastructure, enrollment, etc., but also more to academic mainstream or academic activities to improve quality. And the audit that they were talking about, and they have implemented successfully, is a very important dimension for academic improvement in the universities. Therefore, when we are trying to implement RUSA, we should not get confined ourselves to what we call as the infrastructural facilities or inputs. We should also equally focus on the process factors, and we should also focus on outcomes, which are some of the comments made by others too. So there is a need for accountability factors, and close monitoring is required, and this accountability should come within rather than externally imposed. Then it becomes more meaningful. And of course, there were quite a lot of discussions in many presentations about the importance of ICT for capacity development or capacity building, not only of teachers, not only of students, but also of teachers, which can be used as a very good incentive for people to do. And it's, of course, there is a need, felt need to focus on not only the academic activities, but also more specifically on quality dimensions, which becomes more vague. The interventions becomes more vague when we come to quality interventions than when it comes to input-oriented interventions of infrastructure and others. It was also felt that at times within the institutions, one is not in a position to take the responsibility. Taking the example of the credit system, implementation of the credit system, choice-based credit system of the UGC, it was elaborated that what happens when these systems are implemented if the staff, academic staff is not in a position to take the responsibility of assessment and awarding scores and grades, etc. Friends, there are many issues that were raised about the implementation. There were some issues, some were critical, some were pessimistic, some were too positive, but generally, these discussions have given a lot of emphasis to the fact that this is a new program with a new vision to revive higher education. And I'll say that, I'll end by saying that with Professor Pentel when he said that you cannot have painless surgeries. Therefore, when a new program is coming, a new initiative is made, there is a need to put additional effort and additional labor. And the success of RUSA will not depend upon the amount of money that you receive, but the amount of planning and the amount of initiatives that will be shown at the institutional and state level. Thank you very much.